Welcome back to the Jenstead. I'm Mary. Today is Wednesday, September 3rd, 2025, and I wanted to talk about an article that I saw on Hedge, and it was an announcement that our Treasury Secretary by the name of Scott Bessent made on Labor Day, specifically announcing that the Trump administration may declare a national housing emergency in the fall. And he went on to say that he was making this announcement to the Washington Examiner. And he said it said a toxic combination of elevated mortgage rates and record high home prices has sparked one of the worst housing affordability crises in a generation, sidelining many working class folks from home ownership. He said, we're trying to figure out what we can do, and we don't want to step into the business of states, counties, and municipal governments, Bessent noted, adding, I think everything is on the table. The Treasury Secretary did not elaborate on specific actions Trump could take, but he did mention officials within the administration are analyzing ways to standardize local building and zoning codes and decrease closing costs. Also, he said, I think we're going to see a big economic pickup in 2026. Well, and we'll see what happens in 2026. I'm still watching very carefully what's happening in 2025. And I think there are still a lot of concerns economically that a lot of us have. But anytime, whenever I hear a government official announcing that the government is looking in to fix a problem that it helped create, it always gives me a great amount of pause. And for example, this is a perfect case with the housing market. Obviously, we've had overall inflation throughout the economy, but the housing market over the last 20 years has seen significant changes, and also, so there are a lot of factors that have gone into the skyrocketing price of real estate, and I'm going to talk about a few of those in this video. And specifically, localities, and I'm in the Chesapeake Bay region, so you have a lot of environmental regulations that are imposed on builders, and then you have localities are constantly wanting to try and control through the planning process, control what is being developed. And they're always looking at opportunities to put in more ordinances. As an example, the affordable dwelling unit ordinance is one that was proposed, and I believe some localities have adopted this, and I think it's absurd, where if a developer comes in and his market is saying what he's going to be putting out and producing whatever $700,000 homes in a community. And this affordable dwelling unit ordinance would require that developer to have maybe after every 10 homes, one of them has to be an affordable home. So tell me how that blends, and then whatever their definition of affordable is. Usually it used to be $125,000, which I still think is incredible. But that completely changes the marketing control that the developer has. And also you have localities have these redevelopment programs that are supposed to come in and help and create more affordable housing. And it has a complete opposite effect, because number one, what they produce isn't necessarily affordable, and they'll come in to a lower income established neighborhood, and I know this from my experience, and they will pretty much harass people to the point of, if you don't sell us your home, we're going to condemn the property. And so you need to move out while we build these new affordable homes, and then you can move back in. Well, the homes that the localities end up producing or building, these people cannot afford. They're just priced out and pushed out. And of course, the localities get a lot of federal funds. You have these block grant programs. And I served on the Planning Commission, and I served 8 years on my local board of supervisors from 2007 to 2015. And that's the only reason why I'm very familiar with some of these programs and why many of them do not work and they create more issues. Something else to consider is when a developer comes in, there are what's called proffers in Virginia, which are voluntary contributions that the builder makes. And wink, wink, because the builders usually know if they don't provide certain proffers to the community, their project is not going to get staff recommendation. And a good example of this would be proffers, meaning contributions to our schools. So the theory the government has, the localities have, is, well, they're going to be building homes, which are going to be attracting more families, which are then going to have more school children and impact our schools. And so they need to help pay their fair share, if you will. And so then they come up with a formula that for every house, the builders charged whatever, I don't even know what it is now. It used to be like $5,000 to $7,000 that would go to the school district. And assume, whether or not, the builder doesn't know if children are going to be living in that house or not. So they get the money up front. Guess what the builder does? The builder just passes that on to the consumer. And that inflates the cost of the house. And then whoever moves in there is paying property taxes, real estate taxes, which also go to the school system. So that, to me, is a counterproductive approach to making housing affordable for whether it's low income or just moderate income families. And something else that I saw that had a huge impact, and then it's kind of escalating now into different areas, are you have these large stick home builders, for example, Ryan Homes. And we had in this area a lot of custom home builders, really high quality, but they would do like middle class neighborhoods, if you will. And they were really accountable. And the problem is then you have all of this red tape put on them, be it environmental regulations, be it code compliance. If somebody, the inspector would come and you failed this, well, I'll be back next month. And it would just slow everything down. But also if you had economic dips, that would greatly affect these smaller home builders because they can't afford to absorb all of those costs. So enter in these large, well-funded corporations like Ryan Homes. They can afford to absorb those costs. They can absorb, like when we had the Great Recession, they can afford to just sit on these properties until the time is right for them to come in and build their project. Once they have that special use permit or that rezoning that gives them the ability to move forward. So that again affects affordability because you've got small business people are priced out of these out of future developments, or they come in and promise one thing and they end up selling out to a larger corporation. But when you're dealing with companies that have bottom of their pockets, I mean, they can spend as much as they need to get the property to do their project. Smaller companies, smaller custom home builders can't afford to absorb those costs, and then that affects their ability to perform their jobs. But in general, it's not good for the overall housing and the quality as well. So. And another thing that has really impacted throughout the years is that you've had the more taxes are imposed through localities. So they always want to talk about, well, we have to address, we need more affordable housing, but then they have, okay, we're going to raise this fee and we're going to raise that tax, and the taxes never go down, but the spending continues to go up. And the locality's budgets, a large portion of their budget is dependent on how much they bring in from the real estate tax. So that's something else to consider. And again, some of these programs where we need to solve affordable housing, it's an ongoing issue. They love to have the issue. They never actually solve it because the free market would solve it, and that takes them out of the equation. So they don't like that solution, so they're going to continue studying this and spending a lot more money on it as well. And so we just have, we also have, as I did a video a couple weeks ago talking about the biggest industries in the states throughout the country. And real estate is a huge part, it's the number one industry in more than half the states in the United States of America. So there's a lot of money at stake. There are a lot of people that want to be pumping real estate because they make more money. The real estate agents make a lot of money when the values go up. And something else that I've seen, which I remember reading this in 2021 because everyone's going to Zillow. Let me see what my property's valued at. And, I had no idea. Zillow actually they purchase property and they would buy it in neighborhoods and then they would sell it. So they, again, can outbid your regular consumer. And it also is completely changing the fabric of these neighborhoods. But you have Zillow, back in 2021, they were having some issues because there was a bit of a slowdown. And this is how I found out they actually purchased property. And I thought, well, that's kind of a conflict of interest because they're telling everybody what their values are. Well, they will go in and buy properties in neighborhoods, and then some had said increase the value and inflate the value, and that pushing all those values in that community up as well. And there was an article here. So this was in Market Watch. This is back in 2021. Zillow's offloading 7,000 homes, raising red flags about the real estate market. And then I looked up today that they're back. As of today, Zillow still owns 7,000 homes in the United States of America. So their business, so I thought their business model was simply providing a platform for realtors. Well, obviously it's far deeper than that, but it's a lot of advertising as well. But that affects the cost of housing for everyone if these types of big industries are coming in, pumping the values, and it's always the best time to buy. And we're also, we're seeing people pushing for a reduction in our interest rates to offset the high cost of housing. But the problem is when you do that, you're going to flood the whole market with liquidity, and so you're going to increase inflation more. So I'm not an expert, but that's just kind of been my observation and what I've read and studied. And then two other things I wanted to touch on with this as far as affecting affordability and how we've seen everything skyrocket is we've had private equities come in. And where was that article? So this article is from MoneyWise. Let me see what the date was on this. And it says Wall Street giants like Blackstone are betting big on the U.S. rental housing market as demand skyrockets. Here's how you can get in on this significant cash asset. Well, what Blackstone is doing, as well as other hedge funds and private equity firms, is they're coming in and they're building a whole neighborhood of homes that they have no intention to sell. They're just going to be renting it to people because people think, well, okay, I can rent this nice house in this neighborhood and it's going to be $500 less than if I had a mortgage to pay. Plus, I don't have the closing costs to afford it. So you have this whole neighborhood, and you and I couldn't compete if we were a small builder against the pockets of Blackstone and these other hedge funds and private equity firms that are coming in. Well, that completely changes the whole kind of fabric of what it makes a neighborhood. It's just a rental neighborhood, and it goes back to you will own nothing and you will be happy, and that is definitely the direction they want. So they either are going to accommodate with these homes, or you'll be happy here. Go buy a tiny house that's 800 square feet and pay $125,000 for it and smile while you're doing it. How about that? So and then it talked about specifically private equity firms own 8,200 apartment buildings and over 2.2 million units, representing about 10% of all apartments. And let's see, where did I see? Private equity owned apartments account for more than 25% of the overall apartment units in Atlanta, Austin, Charlotte, Denver, and metropolitan areas. So, we kind of have, it's like the game of Monopoly, where these private equity firms have found a way to come in and get their bite of the apple on our real estate. And regular consumers like us, as I said before, we can't compete because they can pay anything. And we're seeing that with some of these farmers that are being, offered amounts of money they can't refuse to big developers coming in. And they finally, because it's become so difficult to farm, they end up selling out and saying, well, it's not worth it. So I think it's good that this administration is talking about affordability issues for housing because we've seen so many things change, and there are legislation. I believe there's legislation out there talking about to forbid these private equity firms and hedge funds from coming in and buying up neighborhoods or buying homes in neighborhoods, and because they can outbid everybody. So, there are a lot of moving parts to this, but government has usually not been a good part of the solution. They've created more issues. And so we have the government, we have overall economy with inflation and a fiat currency and the manipulations with that market, and then this whole other element of these Blackstone private equity firms, hedge funds coming in and buying up into neighborhoods where it's not just consumer to consumer, it's American consumer bidding against these gigantic hedge funds. So anyway, I hope you all found this helpful, and I hope you have a great day, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.